What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the OU Sports Podcast from the Daily. I'm Colton Sulley, sports editor. We got Louis Raser, Jason Batacao on here on Zoom. We're having to do Zoom because our producer Kaylee couldn't join us today, but we wanted to keep consistent and keep up the video quality for this pod for you guys. But guys, you got anything before we jump into OU versus Tulsa?
Let's get to it.
Yeah, let's get straight to it.
All righty, let's do it. OU dropped in the AP poll this week. They're now at number 19. They're heading to Tulsa for the first time since I believe 2014. Guys, we've talked to offensive coordinator Jeff Lebby, defensive coordinator Ted Roof. We've talked to head coach Brent Venables, and a plethora of players this week. Let's kind of go through our top line thoughts from the press conferences this week. Why don't you start, Louis?
Top line thoughts. Boy, put me on the spot like this. No, top line thoughts. I would say they spoke decently highly about the game against SMU. Obviously, the offense started out slow, out of sync. Couple drops from the receivers from guys who you wouldn't expect to be dropping passes. I think Gavin Freeman had at least one. Drake had one. So that obviously a little bit alarming, but I don't think it's anything they're too concerned about. They talked a lot about the running back rotation. Jeff Lebby says he really wants to get Gavin Sawchuk and Javante Barnes involved there. So I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see what the receiver room will look like going forward. Because I mean, coming off week one, you're like there are so many guys. There are so many mouths to feed in this room. Like it could almost be overwhelming. Now week two, it's like, okay, it's Andrell Anthony. Do we have anybody else? So that's what kind of OU, it seems like that's what I would be saying if I were OU, but that's what I'm most intrigued by heading into this Tulsa week.
I guess I can go now. I think it's interesting how the defense played really well. There was a few the things that I noticed were the defensive line got better throughout the game, unlike Arkansas State, where they just were stagnant, not able to get pressure. But I mean, towards the fourth quarter, they were really starting to get pressure on Preston Stone, and it affected him on his final throw that he made. He made an interception to Justin Harrington. Like you said, sort of about the offense. I mean, the play calling was very I'm not going to say bad, but it was all over the place. I mean, I was talking about this about Colton earlier. Like Brent mentioned a lot before the season that they were going to focus a lot on time management, especially when they had leads in games late. And I think there was 2 or 3 times in that fourth quarter with 8 minutes left, and OU threw the ball 3 times. Didn't run the ball at all. So I thought the offensive play calling was really interesting. Something to look at going forward. It was really inconsistent. It got better towards the end of the game, but largely because of the defense. I mean, there was a lot of positions that the defense put OU's offense in really good field position. So my take would be good defense looked really good. Offense looked subpar.
Yeah, guys, and I would second that. I think we talked about it on our little YouTube post game that we did. Defense obviously looked a lot better than it did last year. You got a variety of guys contributing, and we'll get into that later. But like you said, Jason, the offense was, and you, Lewis, you brought up a good point about the receivers. I mean, we're coming out of Arkansas State week going 12 guys caught a ball, feeling pretty good about OU's receivers, and then Jacquez Petaway doesn't really get on the field. Jaden Gibson doesn't play much. You have Gavin Freeman drop a couple balls. So just some, maybe that group is not as strong as we originally thought last week, coming off a huge win against a very bad team in week one. So just something to look at and something to watch for this week against Tulsa. But another thing that really stuck out to me talking to Brent Venables today was just, his relationship with head coach Kevin Wilson and how far they go back and all the stories that each of them respectively told at their press conference. I don't know if you guys saw Kevin Wilson's today, but he talked about Brent with the Tulsa media there locally today. So, a lot of memories. They go back a long time. So it's just pretty cool that Kevin's back in the state of Oklahoma, coaching Tulsa, and I know Brent's looking really looking forward to seeing him on Saturday and battling with him. But guys, we would be remiss if we didn't talk about injury updates that Brent Venables spoke about today. First, Justin Harrington, who came up with that big interception to really seal the SMU game. He wore a brace on his left knee in the second half. He was seen with a wrap on that same knee during practice on Monday. Venables, to use his direct quote, said he's still banged up, but he didn't indicate whether or not he would be available for Saturday. But along those same lines, guys, I mean, Cheetah's been a position where, OU has had some bad luck with injuries. We saw Dason McCullough leave the Arkansas State game, suffering an ankle injury. We don't really know his status as well. I think Brent used the word hopeful. Is that right?
Yep. Hopeful
For
was
Dason. You thought after you saw Robert Spears Jennings come back against SMU, we saw Drake come back against SMU, that this team was starting to get a little more healthy. Gentry Williams got, banged up a little bit, but Brent says he expects he'll be available against Tulsa. But really, guys, just curious, like the Cheetah position. I mean, outside of Justin Harrington, Dason McCullough, if you lose those two guys at that position this season, I mean, that's putting OU and Brent Venables' defense in a tough spot.
Yeah, it is. But let me just say, I think we're going to figure out how well Peyton Bowen knows that spot, because I think that's kind of the next guy up in that rotation. And I mean, look, Justin Harrington over the offseason said it's a challenging spot to work. Dason McCullough, he said that he really struggled learning Cheetah, all the ins and outs of it during spring camp. Peyton Bowen's a freshman. He's, 18, 19 years old?
Yep.
And it's obviously he's a 5-star recruit. Everybody talks super highly about him, just how mature he is for his age, everything.
Well, just
like
how
that.
intelligent he plays. I mean, we saw it on Saturday with the block punt, and we'll get into it later. But
Yeah.
you bring it up a good point, like just with his young age, just how intelligent of a football player he is.
And we're going to see that even more if he can step into this Cheetah role and really play it well. Because I think you need somebody. Harrington was an interesting one. On practice, he had a wrap around his knee, and then he wore a brace in the second half against SMU. Venables did not say whether he'll be playing, so that's something to watch out for. But yeah, I think Peyton Bowen's kind of the next guy up there.
Yeah, I would say, I mean, there was I don't know if I recounted it wrong, but there was a few times when both Dason and Justin Harrington were out of the game that Reggie Pearson was even getting some snaps at Cheetah, from what I recall. I could be wrong on that analysis, but like Reggie Pearson could also be a guy that steps into that role. I mean, he's a big hitter. He's plays safety, so he's obviously decent at coverage, knows the footwork, yada yada. But yeah, I agree with everything that you were saying.
Yeah, and then like I mentioned previously, Brent talked a lot about Kevin Wilson today. Really, the only other notable thing I got out of his press conference today was an interesting question by one of our colleagues about Jackson Arnold, and Brent indicating that he is not redshirting this season. And while we're on the topic of Jackson, just real quick, I don't want to stay on SMU for too long, but actually, we can talk. Yeah, we were going to talk SMU anyway, but what did you guys think of that package with Jackson? I mean, continuing to, run him in that Blake Bell type package. I think he only rushed for 4 times for 11 yards. I mean, it doesn't seem like it's working. I mean, I would assume they're going to pass out of it at some point and catch a defense off their heels, guys. But what do you make of that?
Go ahead, Jason.
I think it's playing with fire almost. I mean, if Jackson gets hurt and it's a really significant injury, then all this talk of development and not redshirting him, I mean, you're injuring your 5-star quarterback and putting him in a really bad position. And not only that, but OU's talked a lot about competitive depth. If you injure Jackson running him up the middle, who are you left with? I mean, Davis Beville seems like I don't know what's going on with his injury, but like he had a bad knee injury. So who does that leave you with? General Booty, and who else is left? Jacob Switzer? I mean, like, I don't know. I think it's playing with fire, but that's just me.
Yeah, and I think you hit You hit it on the head there, but I think Brent Venables thinks the exact same thing. Not necessarily about Arnold running, but that's kind of what he said when he was talking about Jackson Arnold not redshirting. He said, we don't have the depth for him to get that. That really stuck with me. And he's right. Like Davis Bevel last game was not in uniform, had a whole brace on his leg, everything. Doesn't seem like he's coming back anytime soon. We saw him against Texas. We know who Davis Bevel is. That's not who you want as your quarterback. The other two guys, General Booty and what, Switzer, Jacob Switzer. So that's just not any. Those guys are not going to win you Big 12 championship. I'll just put it that way. So outside of Gabriel and Arnold, it's got to be one of those guys. And yeah, my other analysis was that the Arnold dozer doesn't really flow off the tongue very well. So if he does stay in that role, I'm going to need to make some sort of new nickname for that.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to come up with something different there. Guys, let's go back to what we started with, the defensive improvement against SMU. I mean, talk about Danny Stutzman. Let's first mention him. I mean, led the game in tackles with 17. I think it was the second most in his career. He picks up that National Player of the Week, Walter Camp or whatever it was. He picked up Big 12 Defensive Player of the Week. And then a guy you wrote about last night, Lewis, Key Lawrence, to me, played the game of his life on Saturday. I think he made 7 tackles. You got Peyton Bowen, who we've already talked about. He blocked a punt. He had 4 tackles. I think he had a really nice pass breakup late in the game, if I remember correctly. But the defense so far, I'm bought into this defense. They've improved dramatically from last year. They have more talent, more depth. And I think depth, as we talked about in the last pod, is really the difference here. I mean, last year, Brent came out and said they really didn't have the depth to play the type of defense that Brent ultimately wants this program to play. But I can't say enough good things about the defense. I mean, you can say what you want about some of the deep passes down the field that were wide open, but another thing I'll just say before I pass it off is just the tackling, and just a drastic improvement in the tackling, not only from the prior staff, but just from last year. So that's just kind of what I saw against SMU.
Yeah, definitely. I think OU's linebackers can match up with anybody, at least in the Big 12. Danny Stutzman was all over the place. You couldn't watch a play against SMU without seeing Danny Stutzman involved in some way. Jaron Kanik came up huge on a 4th and 2. He had some not great moments in the game, but I thought overall he played pretty well. And then you got like Kip Lewis stepped up, had a couple plays. So I think OU's linebackers are in a really, really good spot to lead that defense. I think the secondary, they haven't been tested a whole lot, but from what we've seen, very much improved. It's just that defensive line and specifically the pass rush, because other than SMU, other than that long run they had that ended up being a fumble because Key Lawrence hit it out, they really, I think SMU averaged like 3.5 yards per carry, which you're living with that all day if you're defensive line. But I think it's just the pass rush, and they've been using the excuse, max protect, match protect, all this. Eventually you're just going to have to get there. I mean, they're going to have to run something. Maybe they ramp up the blitzes, but you're going to have to get to the quarterback when you play Texas, teams like that. So that's kind of
you mentioned the linebackers. I mean, Danny got in and got a sack finally. I think you're absolutely correct. The defense is much improved. The defensive line still has some issues to iron out there. Jason, what did you see from your vantage point on the defensive play against SMU?
Danny Stutzman was literally everywhere. There was times where like I would take our binoculars and like just watch him, and like the way he gets off the ball, the way the angles that he took. I mean, it's everything that Brent Venables has talked about. I mean, he's matured, he's grown, he's the best linebacker in OU's room. Yeah, and then pretty much all the stuff that you guys mentioned. I mean, Jaron Kanik looks really good at times, but really raw. There was a few times where like he ran off the edge and it was an inside zone, a run or something like that. I don't know what it's called. And he just missed the angle. But then there was other times where like he just was right there. So yeah, OU's linebackers look really good. Secondary much improved. Defensive line still a bit of a question mark in my book, but definitely much improved against, in my opinion, a really good SMU offense. So,
Guys, for sure. We've talked about what we saw on Saturday for the defense against SMU. Here's what defensive coordinator Ted Roof had to say on Monday about his team's defense.
Look at depth, competitive depth, as far as how that goes. Yeah, we're just starting out. We're by no means a finished product, and we haven't arrived or any of that stuff. We're just a work in progress that's going to go out and grind every day. And that's the attitude that our staff and our players have. And it's all about, incremental improvement. And, we've got to get better because we left some plays out on the field the other night, some situations where, we had opportunities to get off the field and didn't. And we got to close the door right there.
All right, guys. We're not going to talk too much about it, but let's move on to an off-the-field incident that happened after the game. Obviously, what was supposed to be a big celebration for Brent Venables, players in the program, kind of got overshadowed by former Baylor coach Art Briles being photographed by an OU media member on the field post game Saturday night. Obviously, can't happen, but it did, and we got Brent Venables, Jeff Lebby, both addressed it. Obviously, Art Briles is Jeff's father-in-law, so naturally, he got questions about that after the game, and we'll throw athletic director Joe Castiglione's statement up here on the screen, but it reads, let me see if I can find it. Yeah, here it reads, quote, "I was just as disappointed as many of our fans when I learned of the post-game situation tonight. Shouldn't have happened, and it was my expectation it never would based on boundaries we previously set. I've addressed it with the appropriate staff." Yeah, guys, it's really all I have to say on the matter, but obviously can't happen. Bad luck.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. I think it's interesting the way OU handled it. Just with, I don't know. There's a lot that goes into it, but I mean, yeah, it just really is a bad look. I mean, you have a guy that had 52, I think it was, allegations at Baylor. Just can't happen. Can't have that guy on the field. But yeah.
Yeah, and for a team that did not have success last year on the field, now you get a win. You're 2-0. You've got momentum. We can see the improvements, and somehow you find a way to lose in some capacity.
Yeah.
That just can't happen. And I think it's pretty clear now that it won't happen down the road, but just can't happen.
For sure. Well, it seems like they have moved past it and are focused on football, and I think we are as well, guys. We were talking about the pass rush and how suspect it continues to be. OU's got some help in that department coming next year. Obviously, 5-star David Stone committed to the Sooners, but Friday night, since we potted last, 4-star Nigel Smith out of Melissa, Texas, picked OU over Texas A&M. Guys, this is a big deal. This is a top 100 guy. Todd Bates and this staff have obviously recruited him very heavily. He was on 9 total visits to Norman. I mean, you'd love to have a guy like Williams Nwaneri commit, and we've talked about it on this podcast over and over and over, but getting Jaden Jackson, David Stone, and now Nigel Smith, and I don't know if they're still there, but I think over the weekend at one point that put OU into the top 10 2024 classes, or top 10 in the 2024 class. But getting a guy like Nigel Smith, you just can't really overstate how big of a deal that is, especially at OU, who's transitioning into a conference that's historically had very good defensive linemen.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to talk too much about it. I feel like you nailed the analysis there. All I want to say is, what a sick way to commit. Like it's halftime, or was it before the game?
It was before the game.
And you throw up the whole graphic video and everything up on the big screen. Also made me realize that my high school's football scoreboard was way underfunded because, wow.
Texas, man. Texas high school football is different, but
Texas
it's-
football.
I'm glad you mentioned the commitment itself because like obviously we weren't there. I was waiting on Instagram Live, and then all of a sudden I see a picture on Twitter or X or whatever it is now of the graphic on the screen, and I thought that was totally badass, like you just said.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But
Yeah. Second,
anyway.
I said. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, we just like to give a little recruiting update, and obviously Nigel Smith is a big one. Guys, I think it's time for predictions. Am I wrong?
No, you're right. Go
Let's
time.
do it. I'm not gonna start because I feel like I always start, and like I don't want to get roasted.
I'll start. I'll go for it. I said before the season that I thought this would be closer than most people are thinking. I don't know. Tulsa did not look very competitive against Washington, though that is a good top 10 legit Washington team. I'm gonna say OU 42, and I'm gonna get Tulsa at 17. I don't think it'll be super competitive after what I saw from Tulsa last week and some of the improvements that OU has made. But yeah, I don't expect Tulsa's offense to be doing a ton. 17 points might honestly be pushing it from what we've seen out of this OU defense, particularly like we were talking about on the linebacker, the secondary, the tackling front. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to see what OU's offense does. I think they need an explosive performance. I think you need to get a lot of different guys involved, running back room, receiving room. That's what I'm looking for. And I think the O-line needs to step up a little bit. And they know that. I mean, we were talking to Walter Rouse today. Bill Bedenbaugh, he didn't give specifics, but he wasn't super pleased with the SMU game. He thought that unit could have done a lot more on Saturday. So I think those are the things that I'm looking for. I think he got to have at least 35, 40-point performance.
Not to cut you off, but he literally benched Savion Byrd in the middle of the game after giving up a sack and playing.
Yeah, like first quarter too, just after one sack.
Yeah, and played Troy Everett, the transfer from Appalachian State, pretty much until the fourth quarter or middle of the fourth quarter. So that's telling. But sorry to cut you off.
No, you're good. That's about it. I got about 42-17.
You go, Jason.
Yeah. Let me think of something.
All right, I'll go. Me and Lewis always have similar ones, but I'm gonna go OU 45, Tulsa 10. I don't think it's close. I think Tulsa's better, obviously better than Arkansas State, but I think I think I'm looking at this game pretty similar to that one. The only thing that's a little different is it's on the road. I don't think that's going to impact this team too much. It's just only an hour and a half away, but there's definitely some intriguing storylines to watch in this game. I want to see which receivers play. I want to see which running backs play. We talked to Javante Barnes tonight. I want to see if Gavin Sacha gets more involved. We finally saw him against SMU, but like everything we've talked about, I want to see if the defensive line improves, and I think this is really a game where they can. Like Lewis mentioned, they didn't look great against Washington, and Washington's Washington, and they're really good. They're a Pac-12 champ contender. So, I don't think it's going to be close. I think I'm going to go 45-10, maybe 45-17, but the way this defense is playing, I think they keep them to 10.
I'm going to go 41-5. Tulsa gets a field goal, right? And then
let me hold on. Let me stop you real quick. Just for context, this is OU's third game. It's Jason's second time predicting a safety.
Oh no, I'm not predicting a safety
against OU.
I'm not predicting a safety. I'm predicting that OU gets their extra point blocked, and then Tulsa runs it back. So
that is so much more outlandish than a safety.
Jason, that's still, that doesn't add up. If you score
that's
a touchdown,
1 point.
you keep the 6. They
yeah,
don't take it away.
but they would be 41-5.
6.
I'm saying that Tulsa is going to return back.
It doesn't take OU's points away.
I know, but I'm saying OU is going to be 41, and Tulsa, they're going to get a field goal, right? But then when OU's kicking their extra point to get to 42, Tulsa's going to catch it.
Jason, in order to kick an extra point, you have to score a touchdown.
I know they will still score a touchdown. I'm just saying.
So it'll have. So if. Oh,
Okay.
okay. I understand now.
Yes.
Tulsa, okay.
Tulsa's gonna run back. They're gonna block the extra point. It's gonna fumble into the hands of some random player. They're gonna run it back, and it's gonna be 41-5. So yeah, that's my prediction.
I don't know what we're putting in the coffee at the newsroom, but
Yeah, I don't know either.
Need some.
Okay, I understand now. I was getting a little confused, but that is Jason's second time picking a safety. All righty. Well, we can end it there, I think. If anybody, unless anybody else has any interesting topics they'd like to bring up. I mean, Texas beat Alabama, which was cool, I guess. I can't wait for that game here in a couple weeks. That's going to be a
Colorado.
trip.
Go Colorado.
Colorado as well. Yep.
Yeah.
But anyway, that'll do it for us here on the OU Sports Podcast from the OU Daily. Make sure and check out our stories on OUDaily.com. Jason will have a really good inside look into Kevin Wilson and his time at OU, and previewing OU's matchup with Tulsa later this week. I know Lewis is cooking on some stuff. Might have something on Peyton Bowen here coming pretty soon. I might have something on Troy Everett coming, but go read our stories from last weekend. I did a piece on Dylan Gabriel and his family, and his aspirations of playing in the NFL after this season, and just how important Hawaii is to him. But you can go check out all of our coverage, including the Lebby Bryle situation and all of that. But thank you guys for your time, and we will catch you on the next episode.